Om te dhyan yoga nugata pasyan devatma shaktim svagunayar nagudam yaha karnani nikilani thani kalatma yuktanya adidishtat yekaha. Om shantihi shantihi shantihi. Practicing the yoga of meditation, the ancient seers of India opened their inner eye of wisdom to behold the Devatma Shaktim, the divine energy existing everywhere and in everything, which, though veiled by her own modes of nature, was nevertheless one and indivisible, and which had been incomprehensible to them earlier due to the limitations of their own intellects. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavo Vahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu, Ma Vidvishu Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, divine reality, protect us. May it sustain us, and may it illumine our thinking consciousness. May we also not find fault with each other, with the world, and with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Surprise, everyone. We are broadcasting to you from SRV Associations in a fifth class, which was unscheduled via what we sent out in the emails, but which we announced last week in this same location at this same time on the SRV live streaming channel, that we were going to wrap up the intended four class series of Kundalini Yoga titled The Wisdom Eye. And we decided, because of the virus and the need to cloister ourselves, as I like to say, because I hope people are using this time of isolation and social distancing and the names they're using for it, to spend more quality time with philosophical and religious solutions. We call that the Dharma in our tradition. It's also a term used quite widely in Buddhism, which is much like the Vedanta, and has its yogic element and its tantric elements too. So in this Dharma, one distances oneself not just from another body, but from all the potential negativities that are rising in the mind continually. Phenomena that can be of a unthreatening kind, if you're talking about nature, or prakriti is the word we used. Everything that's manifest out of the insentient side of called the tattvas, or the principles like the five elements and nature, which produce forests and mountains and rivers and so forth, and in our dreams too produce the same things in a dream form. But also distance ourselves from, maybe for all time, from the six passions and the eight fetters and the nine antarayas and the five kleshas, and we can go down a whole list of negative or klista vrittis, negative vibrations of the mind, which we would all just rather not see them present in our thinking or in our minds. It doesn't matter whether we're believers or non-believers, or religious or non-religious, or have philosophical acumen or none. We would just rather not see those kinds of things surface in the mind, so that the mind and the world that it projected, according to our tradition, Vedanta and Yoga and Tantra and so forth, can go on as a world with the least amount of suffering and problems possible. As we don't, as Vedantists, necessarily agree on face value or point blank to that statement that we must go out and remove the suffering from all sentient beings. That's not possible here. There's necessary sufferings that will persist, and there are unnecessary sufferings. Those you want to try and negate, or at least diminish. And guess what? There are also sufferings that are a part of the package of embodiment, which you'll never get rid of. We call those the 6 transformations: birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. No embodied being can get rid of those. And you might say, if you want to take the teaching deeper, dharmically speaking, is that there's also a kind of suffering that people prefer to keep. Swami Vivekananda made that startling statement to one of his English disciples once, and he said, "Well, you don't understand, madam, that there are as many people born here to suffer as there are to enjoy." Now, that was a point-blank statement that would catch an English person, a good, noble English person as she was, off guard, and maybe change their thinking a little bit. The change would be more away from the fact that God is doing all good things and the devil's doing all bad things. And maybe not choose either of those options. Just say that God and devil are all in the thinking consciousness of humanity, and of the ancestors, and of the gods and goddesses, and of the rishis and seers, or what we were here last night. You see, the 3 worlds are basically humans, ancestors, elementals, lower gods, so forth, heavenly beings. You get higher than that, and you go to higher realms where subtle beings are occupying subtle bodies in great happiness and great bliss that has no more return, as Krishna says in the Gita, to the world of embodiment, physical embodiment, where those sufferings are prevalent in most people's life. They're trying to run away from them by taking refuge in pleasure. But the pleasure-pain duality has been cited by the Indian rishis from time out of mind. It sort of reminds us of today's situation with this virus, is that we're forced now to go inside and be quiet. And I have my experience with different kinds of people writing me, because I'm a Dharma teacher. I like to share things that will help people, and especially to fend off crises like this and keep their stability, keep their peace of mind, because Holy Mother, peace and bliss be upon her, used to say to us when she was embodied in the 18 and 1900s that you need peace of mind first and foremost. You should never lose that. So nothing should be able to take away your peace of mind, including the threat of death, which is an illusion in our tradition. It is a beautiful song, Ram Prasad, which sings, "I have received a clear order from the Divine Mother of the Universe that death must die. I must put death in its own grave," as my teacher, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, also peace and bliss be upon him always, used to say to us from the platform or the podium when he was discoursing beautifully on the Vedanta philosophy. So in times of crisis like this, which has affected us more than just the past viruses and diseases that have come upon the world, which didn't have this kind of effect upon us as much. And in fact, there were probably as many people dying from a few of those And we never heard about it from the media that much. We just saw a bunch of numbers flashed in front of us. But this has really caught the attention of everyone. So my solution is, right now, you see, because there's this thing called a preamble. you amble about. A person like me ambles about with vocabulary, with words. And if I'm well known for anything, or known at all for anything, it would be my preambles. So I'm going to take a little time here to preamble about a religion and its followers who live as if there was a virus around them all the time. They're called the Jains. And there is a chart. I didn't bring it because I just wanted to go through a few points around how the Jains live and compare it. This is, you say, well, maybe this doesn't really directly correlate with the 7 centers of Kundalini Yoga and the Wisdom Eye. I would beg to differ and have a different opinion about that. This is all about your style of life, which should be a manifestation of your state of mind. And if your state of mind is warlike, then your life is infused with fear and domination and killing. And the Jains are probably the most non-violent religion we've ever seen. Sometimes there's even jokes bantered about the Jains. So, they wear masks so they won't breathe even an insect, or try not to step on an ant. Well, and the Buddhists practice that too. They might say if there's religions that are sort of warlike, because religion has been one of the major causes of war on the physical plane, here in the Bur Loka, here in the first 3 chakra living, ancestors coming back to dominate like they did when they were alive before. They're also very peaceful beings coming back to be warriors of peace like they were before. And they're taking up a vow like bodhisattvas to try and help this planet reach, and its occupants to reach a very peaceful position. So the Jains then would stand out as a classic example of how to act in times of trial. And to them, times of trial are every day of every life that they take every breath with. They're living as if these 6 transformations and all the possible karmas are right at their fingertips, about to infringe upon their life. So they're very careful of how they act, how they think, and they have vows they take around it. Let me just, for a 5-minute, 10-minute preamble here, before we return to the 7 chakras and direct these and correlate these back to the chakra system. I'll just pick and choose from some of these points. And we thank Swami Brahmeshanandaji Maharaj for providing us such good information on the Jain religion. He's still living in India, and he's in Varanasi, an elderly, respected and revered monk, and a good friend of SRV and personally of mine. And so he went and took some pilgrimage time off from his duties and visited all the Jain temples he could, and lived with the Jains in the temples and asked questions of their priests, and then wrote us some, 8 or 10 article long series in the Nectar of Non-Dual Truth journal about everything he learned from the Jains. And he's a Hindu Swami, a member of the Ramakrishna order. So it was a very wonderful contribution and addition that he made to our knowledge of a tradition in India that's actually gone back 24 generations at least before Buddhism. So we know Lord Buddha was about 550 BC, roughly. And so 24 generations before that, before Mahavir, who is the latest Tirthankara or great teacher of the Jains, that's a long time to be nonviolent, to practice a religion that has elements like this in it. The Jains will not, they will restrict their movement within just a specific area. Sound familiar to anyone listening now, or when you will listen to this later, is that they're not going outside their homes or outside their yards. That is, and they won't restrict animals either by tethering them or putting a hook in their nose, or like I saw up in the land next to mine just the other day, tags in all the young cows you see in their ears, orange tags. You know what's going to happen to those critters, those non-violent, beautiful, productive creatures in the future. So the Jains are very careful about their treatment of animals and even insects. And I'll tell you why in a moment, sort of as a conclusion to my preamble. But that's one thing that is very apropos and very similar to what we're going through right now, only we're going through it, a lot of us, out of fear. Oh, I don't want to catch that illness. When our thinking should be, I'm birthless and deathless, and I have a strong, what I like to call mental immune system, because there are many books and many lectures and talks and a lot of people involved in the physical immune system as if the body were all that important. It's only important to the extent that you use it to realize God, according to the seers of India. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels in Maya and having enjoyment and having suffering in turns. You're on the Kala Chakra. So if you don't look upon this body as the temple of God and use it to do sacred things in, then you have this problem with samsara, or with Maya, and therefore with your own thinking process. As we started off chanting, may our thinking process be clearly illumined by the light of our own consciousness, which is God. And that same consciousness, not aware of God, is the devil. So we have our own equivalence of God and the devil here on earth. That it makes much more sense than looking up or looking down, or thinking maybe there's some force outside of us that's causing our problems, when it's our own mind that's causing our problems, including fear of something that shouldn't be feared. Like a snake living in fear of a frog. There's a song in India about that. A snake lives in fear of the frog, and it should be having it for dinner. And there's a correlative song that goes, death is a condiment. It's a sloka in the Upanishad, basically. It says, all beings are, death is going about harvesting them like ripe pumpkins, harvesting heads, human heads, like ripe pumpkins, and having it using it as a condiment, for its own meal. So death is devouring everything, all the time. You never know when it will come, and people live as if it's something to be stuffed back in their subconscious mind, and when it does come forward, to be feared or to be ignored. You should be meditating on death every day, according to my tradition. And when you just practice meditation, that is meditating on death, because you say, I'm not the body, I'm not the senses, I'm not the life force, because man does not live by bread alone. I'm not the mind, I'm not the intelligence, I'm not the ego. And when you examine the insentient principles, tattvas, of our tradition like that, and you detach from them, then you're detaching from some 5 kinds of viruses. You see, you're going away from things that cause you problem. The imbalanced mind, the uninspired intellect, the rascally ego, those are problems. Those are germs in you that will spread and cause you what? More births in samsara, more lifetimes in Maya. And you shouldn't be distancing yourself from those very things. Well, you can see how a teaching like that can take you inward if you're so inclined. And so I'll say this again, restriction of movement to within specified areas. So if a Jain family, if the father of that family got an offer to go travel somewhere to increase his monetary gain, he would say no, most likely. He'd say, how far is that? And let's see, how much karma, how many bugs will I step on? How many insects will I kill? How many people will I aggravate or piss off? And how many gods will I make angry at me in this process of doing a journey with all its karmic rife, with all its karmic repercussions and implications. So he'll consider that. We were talking about that on the way over today in the car. See? That is basically you think before you act. If you don't stop and consider death and think about it, then it's upon you and you never had a chance to think about what it was. So you're caught off guard and you go blank at death. But if you thought about it, then you created a space for death in your life. Dharma Raja, he's like the king of everything. The mother has given him that official duty to take people from one world to another. There's nothing about the end of consciousness in that. Death doesn't end anything except sicknesses, viruses in you. So you just, as I heard it said the other day, and someone said, "Oh, we just go on." Well, there's some teachings involved in that too. Maybe at some point the illumined soul will not want to go on. We'll just want to stop all processes and we'll say Kali, Kali, Kali at the end of his life and not return. As Krishna says, they go by the path of the sun, the path of light, never to return here to the world of embodiment again. So this is just one of the great vratas called Guna Vrata. Another is stay clear of impure and objectionable places. These are vows you take if you become a Jain. So what does that mean? Well, in context to what we're going through today, I heard that all the bars were closed. Drinking alcohol, which is against the Buddhist precepts completely. You don't drink it, you don't hold it, you don't sell it to others. Heard about some bartender that we know about just got the virus, the COVID. I was thinking, well, he was selling alcohol for years to people. Didn't really matter if he took it or not. There's karma involved in that. Here, intoxicate yourself with this, and whatever you do after this, like get in a car accident and kill others, or go out and do something stupid, I'm going to have to share in that karma. Because you gave them the alcohol that made them inebriated, that made them do the act, you have a share in that karma. Imagine this on the level of war. Governments going to war and how much karma they're taking on with other cultures. And how long it takes for them to work it out. And you're asking me why this world goes on the way it is? And I keep telling you what the solutions are. Well, become peaceful, become nonviolent, give up things, and stay away from objectionable places. Give up all sinful activities and meditate on the equality of all beings. Somebody wrote me an email today. A professor, wrote me, and he said, "I don't really understand this Atman you keep talking about. It's in everyone and everything, and but I see everything different. You see, I don't see the same Atman in everyone. I see everyone's different. Some of you seem to think maybe you've realized it, and others absolutely don't have anything to do with it. So I'm going to have to write back tonight when I get through with this class and tell them, yes, there's the ego and ego life and dualities and karmas and all of that, and you're engaging in that, so the Atman might as well not be there in those people. I mean, we have it on good authority from the seers that the Atman exists equally in everyone in both quantity and quality. The only difference then, as Vivekananda has clarified for us in this day and age, is the degree of its manifestation and the vehicle, vahana, that it's taking on. If it's taking on an inferior vehicle, like an animal body or a restless body, born in the wombs of the restless, or the depressed, as Krishna says in the Gita, then of course the Atman's going to be completely veiled, and you probably don't want to go looking for it there. You're just going to have to stand back and say, well, I think the Atman's in you, okay, and sometime you'll get over this ego, and you'll bring out the Atmic tendencies and characteristics, and then I can smile and say you've realized it. But in the meantime, I'm going to shift my attention over to these beings who are divinely focused and adept at their own consciousness. And because as I said earlier, they're withdrawing from mechanisms like the ego and the dull intellect and the dual mind and the scattered thoughts. Those are the four aspects of the mind right there. Antahakarana, the inner organ. The inner cause of everything. Karana means cause. So I just read you Gunavratas. If you're a Jain, you'll observe those four things. And doesn't it sort of sound like they don't want to go out, like karma is some sort of a COVID virus? And it's been there forever, and they don't want to encounter it. They want to diminish it as much as possible. So is it really the killing of something that's frightening them? Or being killed? No, they're just thinking they're measuring things in terms of repercussions. I've got enough here in this life to deal with birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death, lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, pride, shame, my family life, my neighbors, people in this world who are violent, dominating leaders who are coming through with armies. I've got enough to deal with all that to where I don't want to deal anymore with my own karma. That's just piling more gloom on gloom, to quote Vivekananda. So I'm going to make sure my karma is minimalized before I reach the end of this lifetime in this body, so that I'm free afterwards. I can lift off of the confines of relativity and soar, can sail. See, Come Sail With Me is a great song by Ram Prasad in India. He wants you to cut loose the moorings that bind you to the harbor of mundane human convention. Well, my preamble is coming to an end, and we'll get more on track with Kundalini, but you're probably talking about, if you're a successful and dedicated Jain, you're probably living at a level of the heart chakra already, because you're very sensitive to the sufferings and karmas of others, and you're also very much aware of your own part that you could play in both creating more or alleviating said karma. There's a few other ones that are very good up here. These are called careful conduct. Be careful when you walk. Don't ridicule or talk ill, because that's a kind of violence of the mind that you cast on others. Be careful in accepting any food in the hands of others. Inspect all objects, picking them up, putting them down. You don't want to kill something in that process, and you want to do it very mindfully. Pick up a shovel, be careful how you use it. And there are specific rules on that. Eat and drink in the daytime. Like Sri Ramakrishna said, keep your stomach more empty at night, because then you can meditate and you won't fall asleep early, because of using your energy to digest food puts people to sleep, so they fall asleep before they have time to do their evening devotions. What else could be said here? They like to fast twice in a lunar fortnight, so they'll practice fasting. They like to serve guests with food and comforts, and they like to restrict use of food and drink, bags and bedding. So it's not just outer, but it's also internal things that they're very careful about. They don't like to tire and restrain an animal from moving about. So if you go to India and you see some cows running about the city, then you'll know probably why that happens. They won't beat any living being with a stick or a whip. They won't pierce the nose, ear, or limbs of any animal, or load animals with burdens beyond their ability to carry them. And they never want to fail to supply food and drink to humans and animals both. So it sounds like they're acting as if the Atman is there in everything. And maybe the only restrictions are the vehicle that consciousness happens to be inhabiting at that time. And so they're very careful about those kinds of things. I wanted to get here to, if I can find it, going beyond the prescribed limits of one's area, we've already said that, going down a well or crawling into holes and caves, draining bodies of water, increasing one's area prompted by greed, infatuation, and profit. And they want to avoid all trades in which furnaces are used, trees are cut, forests are burned, liquor is produced, animals and birds are sold for their plumage and for captivity, excavations and explosions are used, trade in ivory, bones, horns, fur, etc., trade involving lard, meat, fat, etc., commerce in poisonous substances and drugs, work where lakes, ponds, and wells are dredged up, all work where wicked men and prostitution are supported. There's a short list of what the Jain thinks about in terms of its religion, how it causes them to do karma yoga and restrict negative karma in their lives. So sometimes we've had our own jokes about this to say, well, the Jain goes to an office of employment, and so they run down this list. Well, we have a job opening for drying up this lake or excavating this cave, or oh, sorry, sir, I cannot do that. Oh, sorry, sir, I cannot do that. Well, we have some job open in a perfumery factory. Oh, sorry, sir, I cannot do that. See? So it's going to be very hard for the Jain to find a job. So all of you who are out without jobs right now, you might consider that a blessing in a sense. And because the Jain is trying to live with less, eating less, moving less. And what's more about the lifetime? More inner practice, more expansion of consciousness, more carefulness and compassion for living beings, more thinking about others than oneself, and much more of courage than of fear. So here you have a quick preamble that I'm known for before my classes actually begin, of something that applies directly to today's life in this world and what we're facing off right now with this latest virus scare. And it's not that we do not want to be careful and proceed carefully, but it just seems to me that a comparison between, say, social distancing and Jain lifestyle is very, very obvious and nice to put side by side for our consideration. So a question to ask ourselves, what are we doing as we sequester ourselves away from other members of society? And how are we doing it? There's a guideline for you with what the Jains would be doing. And in fact, they'd be saying, the son would come home and say, you should see what's happening out there, father. And the Jain father would say, what's that, son? And he said, well, they're doing this and that and that and that. And the Jain father would say, well, that's what we always do all the time. See? So we're well off in this kind of challenge, you see. We live frugally with economy of motion and balance of mind, peace of mind, and with non-violence as our main vow as a Jain. So you're talking about a being that's a candidate for salvation and liberation, as we would say in our tradition. And they're living very karma-free lives, so they can leave the body when it comes time without fear of death and move on to the highest, through the nadis, if you want to put it this way, to the higher chakras, because that's where we're going right now to finish off our 5th class in this series. The 6th chakra is called Agya Chakra, and it's the wisdom eye, and called the Jnana Chakshu by Shri Krishna, and the Dharma Eye by Lord Buddha, and the white dove ascending, and many other assignments which we looked at some 3 or 4 weeks ago when we had that chart on the wisdom eye. Since then, we've been showing how it can open to higher consciousness if these other chakras are free of grantis, and if Kundalini can move along the nadis. And yes, particularly the central, Sushumna Nadi, it's this main channel that goes up. So let me call up the chart that we just finished last week. Here you see the 7 causes and 10 impediments in Kundalini Yoga. Now, we've already looked at it. One of the more surprising of the teachings, maybe for those who are deeply into a system like Kundalini Yoga, was the poisons and the nectars that attend upon all six chakras, we should say. By the time you get to the seventh chakra, which is beyond the third eye or wisdom eye, Sahasrara, then what you've done is to arrive at everything is in a causal state, is probably the best description. Sort of like deep sleep tonight that all human beings go into. They don't have bodies anymore, temporarily out of their minds. They'll probably another form of being out of their minds when they get back into the physical body if they're not balanced. But nevertheless, they have gone beyond mind, intellect, thoughts, and ego. Let's see, the ego. I'm glad I forgot that word, but it came back to me when I thought about it. So nectars and poisons are there, and we had just ended up at the Agya Chakra, which is this wisdom eye, to show that there's a kind of misdirection, confusion, and you might say indeterminacy that is there at the third eye. And we have it on good authority that some yogis had reached inward to this high state of consciousness. Remember, these are lotuses, they're chakras, they're spiritual vortexes, like a city with many avenues leading into it. We'll get to that in a minute to see how many petals and how many letters are there. I have a reading for you that explains that very well. So at the Agya Chakra there, a person who arrives there could be disoriented. It could be an experience that's new to that particular aspirant or practitioner, and they're having their first open eye experience. And this, of course, would have mean that you've probably shut the two eyes in meditation a long time ago in order to bring Kundalini Shakti to this highest center where she can affect an opening. And you can see the light of Brahman in that, through that opening. And probably hear the sound of Om very strikingly, very strongly, like 1,000 bumblebees, the song sings in India, humming. So that I would say if I wanted to pick one word to characterize those four poisons, it would be this imbalance. You see, this sort of confusion was one word that was chosen here, or a misdirection, but kind of being taken off guard by the deep power of what you see there, like in Sri Ramakrishna's quote, which we'll read soon, about how one goes beyond those chakras and reaches a higher level of consciousness and is dumbstruck by what is seen there inwardly. Because everything else, like worlds and senses and ego and everything, has gone away. Sort of again like deep sleep, only your eye has been kept open and you're seeing it go away. When Swami Vivekananda was touched by Sri Ramakrishna when he was a young boy, Naren, his name at the time, described it later as that the world just shrunk away. It's like he was being taken up quickly into the sky, into the ethers, and everything, buildings and everything, just fell away. And he said to Sri Ramakrishna, he cried out, "What are you doing to me? What are you doing to me? I have my family at home." So he was just a young boy, and he's thinking about, this is all going away, what have you done to me? And Sri Ramakrishna touched him and brought him back into the heart chakra, or back where he probably was in the living room of God, as Sri Ramakrishna called it, right at the heart. And Naren went away thinking, boy, I'll never let him do that to me again. But the next time he went to the master, the master did it to him again, and that was because he wanted to make sure that this was the soul that he had seen from a higher Chakra and asked to come to earth with him. There are songs about this that are very beautiful. Yeah, and written by some of the direct disciples of Ramakrishna order. So these poisons are there, and this is the last thing we looked at when we ended last week's class, not to leave out the nectars, that there's a very deep and penetrating intuition that comes to the seeker, and ability for visualization of a much broader, expansive type, like the light of Brahman, clarity, which is the makings of non-dual experience, such clarity, such crystal clarity that everything seems to be nothing but truth. Everything smacking of nothing but the highest truth. And spirituality itself, really, it reminds me of Swami Brahmananda when he was asked about the highest samadhi, Nirvikalpa samadhi. What's that like, and so forth. And Swami Brahmananda said, that's the beginning of your spiritual path. And so the disciple was thinking, my gosh. So he really meant everything really smacks of the highest truth, and is authentic spirituality. When Nirvikalpa comes to you, at least give them a taste of it. Nirvikalpa, the extinction of kalpas, ages, the extinction of time. So if time goes away, space would go away, and all beings who are in time and space would go away. And you're standing at the very brink of non-dual awareness, gazing into the formless light of Brahman. So you would see that that could cause you misdirection. It could cause you indeterminacy, you see. So it's not that these poisons are actual at this chakra. To understand it would mean to say that you would see everything come forth from the mind that is having this experience, particularly for the first time. Like the first time you get in the water, too cold, you see. You get out and get back in, and it's warmer. You got used to it. So the more you got into this higher level of consciousness and came out and went back in again, the more acclimatized you got to higher awareness. And so that's a good thing to keep in mind for a spiritual sojourner who's going deep, deep, deep into the ocean of God's beauty. Now, let's read this final quote here, and so we can move from this chart to a chart on the chakras, which gives us more information that a lot of beings are looking for and will benefit from. Shri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, whom I've often called in my classes the true and greatest teacher of Kundalini Yoga, said this: the Kundalini dwells in the Muladhara Chakra, that's of course at the base of the spine. When it is aroused, it passes along the Sushumna, that's the central channel, pierces the 6 centers, and at last reaches the lotus at the head, the Sahasrara. This is called the movement of the Mahavaya. Mahavaya means the great wind. This great wind is the movement of Divine Mother power. It's the spiritual current, and it culminates in samadhi. All the lotuses then blissfully blossom forth. This is a very secret experience. And so Sri Ramakrishna discusses this from the standpoint of having had this experience many times and been able to, as Holy Mother used to say about him, get beyond Maya, because everyone in the world it's very difficult for them to get beyond Maya, but Sri Ramakrishna was one of those beings who penetrated through even the wisdom eye and reached the Sahasrara. And of course words will fail to actually describe this, but you can get a taste of that from some of these quotes. And of course that's why beings have written songs to him about his competency and mastership of Kundalini. Bhava Bhaya Banjana Purusha Niranjana Ratipati Ganjana Kari Rati Jana Ranjana Manomada Kandana Jaya Bhava Bandana Hari Jaya Bhava Bandana Hari Mati Gati Vardana Kali Bala Mardana Vishaya Viraga Prashari Jada Chitta Chetaka Bhavajala Belaka Jayanara Manasachari Jayanara Manasachari Jaya Purushottama Anumana Samyama Jaya Jaya Antarayami Karatara Sadhana Nara Dukkha Varana Jaya Ramakrishna Navami Jaya Ramakrishna Navami Jaya Ramakrishna Namami Jaya Ramakrishna Namami. That's the Sri Ramakrishna Jayashtakam. When I start singing it, I forget that I am on a time constraint or something. And I just want to sing all 8 of these beautiful slokas. And these particular ones are pertinent to our subject because it translates as dwelling in our heart and inspiring our minds. You bring us safely across the ocean of suffering by quickening our spiritual evolution, by awakening Mother Kali and spreading discrimination in the world. You have emerged victorious as the world teacher, the Jagadguru. That's the true Sadguru of this age, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and the great avatar, Vadishtaya, the best of all combined avatars that have ever appeared on earth, there in Rama and in Krishna, Ramakrishna. So by awakening Mother Kali and spreading discrimination, remember in spiritual circles of Vedanta, that's Viveka discrimination you're talking about, which is a discrimination between what is essential and what's non-essential. Or sometimes they say what is real and what's not real, what's sentient and what's insentient. So if you're huddled inside your house right now and you're thinking, what should I do with my time? Maybe practicing some Viveka and Vairagya would be a good thing. If you're attending a class with a Dharma teacher who knows what those things are, and in my case you've practiced them for 50 years and done that kind of meditation on and on and on and on, day after day, and never given up the trail, and always attempting to raise higher consciousness. You can speak about it Buddhistically or Vedantically, but when you speak about it with Kundalini, then this is a very specific level of 7 vortexes connected together by nadis, which have certain worlds that they pertain to and certain words that they vibrate on. We'll get to that in a minute when we see the next chart. Or are we already there? I was thinking we were ending up this chart. The next sloka says, reverent salutations to the one whose renunciation is matchless and who accomplished severe austerities for the good of humanity. To that best of all avatars, who is the inner-controller immortal, abiding eternally in the soul, we bow down in humble obeisance. So, inner ruler immortal, seated in the heart and the soul, that's the Antaryami. Beautiful word in Sanskrit that describes our true nature, our self, our Atman, our Purusha, and that has a direct connection inside to Brahman, to the Almighty Father, to Buddha nature. So beautiful songs like this then remind us in no uncertain ways that there are beings who have traversed these chakras and have had their realizations and insights specific to each one and have returned again. In Sri Ramakrishna's case, 1836 to 1886. For those 50 years, gave out these teachings. And now you can find them in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which is the most remarkable testament to spirituality of any book present to people of this day and age. It's got everything in it. And all the teachers from different darshanas are saying so. Everything spiritually from soup to nuts. I heard that said once. So you've got the whole divine menu there. But teachings from yoga, Vedanta, Kundalini, of course, and a lot about Sankhya and other darshanas, or ways of clear seeing, that clarity we're talking about. So this is probably a good way and a good time to segue into this chart on my left, on your right, that we could probably see our way through, hopefully with great intelligence, if our own eye is beginning to open in a singular way before the end of this first half of this class. So there you have what you had in this chart with a different image and with different teachings assigned to these levels. Here you had poisons and nectars, but here's specific teachings and dynamics of the 7 chakras to fill in what you might be wondering about. And it could clarify a lot of the teachings you got on this chart, because it's a little bit more philosophically traditional, and a lot of the teachings there appear from the scriptures. You can see I have quotes there at each level to sort of explain it, explain our way through this. But there you see as far as what I've said before, that these chakras are not in the physical body, but there are places, 7 areas in the physical body that can be compared to or utilized for explaining how consciousness moves to higher centers inside the great body, you might say, the Virat form. Well, not just the individual little form, but even all the way through the ancestors, and when they took forms in heaven, and the gods and goddesses who are taking very beautiful forms, and even into formless reality itself at the very top of the head. So why not use the human as a model for this consciousness as she dances through these spiritual vortexes? So basically, let's start here with the English equivalents. Base of the spine, generative organs, navel, heart, throat, forehead, and crown of the head. That probably puts it simply for all of us who are maybe have any sort of haziness or doubt or unclarity about the assignments of the human body in accord with these 7 levels of higher consciousness. Any intelligent person or reasonable thinker would know that when you say the crown of the head, there, physically speaking, is just a brain. It reminds me that last week I saw an article that said scientists is beginning to think that the mind is different than the brain. So that's what I've been saying for 30 or 40 years, that the mind is the kingdom of heaven inside of you. It's like your dreams and so forth. Your mind conducts all of this. So when your children come to you, come to the mother through the vehicle of the father and mother and their union, then that's just on the first 3 chakras level that's happening. They're giving up a form, going back into a heavenly form, usually, and then picking a time again according to their karmas, which is why if you're a Jain, you're probably very careful about what your karmas are, and then being born again to parents again. And this could suggest that maybe mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and grandfathers and grandmothers and children are trading places all the time, and that you might give birth to your grandfather if you loved him, and that soul is like pods of whales, Holy Mother said, packs of wolves. Souls are being born with each other over time. They have an eternal connection with each other, And that's particularly true of the lovers of God. They come to know that they have this connection, and so they know how to look for each other from lifetime to lifetime, where to be born, and when to be born, and with what family to be born in. This is all a conscious ability. Study Tibetan Buddhism for the most clear and recent Dharma teachings on that. But the same is also happening to ignorant beings who do not know about consciousness, who don't think about God during their life, and just do actions and fall into the wheel of birth and death, of action and reaction. So it's action and reaction for the lot of you, if you're worldly without any consciousness, but it's action and inaction for the illumined soul. They can go beyond action and its results because they're very careful of what they're doing. That's why I like to start off this class with the Jain, example of the Jains, and how they're very careful about their actions because they know this will create karma in the future, means future lifetimes. So that a little bit about what happens there at the base of the spine. They call that, as far as the location, because you can see above on the chart, the chakras themselves, the element and the deity that's assigned to each one of them, the location where they are, and the petals and nadis that are flowing at those levels. You'll notice that the petals get less and less until finally it busts wide open and there's the 1,000-petaled Sahasrara. So this is some very interesting and informative, beneficial information for meditators. And I think it's that way even if they're not practicing specifically the Kundalini Yoga system. They could be Vedantists or Buddhists, and they could look at this system and say, oh wow, there's another beautiful way of expressing what's in my tradition, because India has always had this concourse, this commerce in spiritual wealth going on with one another, and much less of the my religion is the only right way, or my path is the only right one to take. They've always been playing off of each other, adding on to the wisdom over time. So it's not just one scripture with a closed cover at the end. It's ongoing Dharma with open pages in abundance, all concurring with one another after they check each other. So a diamond with many facets, if you want to use that analogy. So we looked at the location. You see, that is with the body, and you'd have to say, make sure that you figure in your subtle body in dreams and your deep sleep body, because that's where the real location of these chakras will become clear to you when you can consciously leave the body and consciously dream and consciously open your inner eye of wisdom inside of deep sleep. And finally reach Turiya, this, the highest place of pure conscious awareness. So if we looked at that and across the board, you already know by your study of the previous chart what these are named. Muladhara, Sadhishvana, Svadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddha, Agya, and Sahasrara. Now, if we took the quote from Shri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa to launch us into our 3-hour journey to the Sahasrara, we're going to make this something that we're doing here in our ashram. And luckily all of you can join us live stream because you can't walk into our doors because of the virus scare out there, but you can also look at this later if you missed it, or review it would be a good idea. You can see how we are just moving up the chakras, envisioning, as it were, what it would be like if we actually did this in a conscious meditation, like the seers do. So the quote by Sri Ramakrishna here is, after great effort and spiritual practice, the Kundalini is awakened. At that time, the mind of the aspirant is withdrawn from the 3 lower centers. He feels the first awakening of divine consciousness and sees light. In mute wonder, he sees that radiance and cries, "What is this? What is this?" A beautiful quote out of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna about the opening of these centers one by one inwardly into the kingdoms of heaven, but then beyond the kingdoms of lower heaven, into a higher heaven, and then beyond heaven into the realm of the seers and the Trinity. You see, sometimes the Trinity, there are beautiful songs about that too, that we sing when we want to indicate the beauty of these teachings. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Deva Maheshwara Gurur Eva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Agyana Timirandasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. And another verse pertinent to this. Aneka Janma Sampraptir Karmindana Vidahine Atma Jnana Agnidanena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Deva Maheshwara Gurur Eva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Brahmanandam Paramasukharam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dandvaititam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamashadi Laksham Ekam Nicham Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tanamami. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So those particular verses out of what's called the Guru Stotram relate to us manifesting as the mother of all knowledge, secular and spiritual. You dispel the illusion of ignorance, grant the precious boon of subtle insight. Your powerful presence has opened my inner eye of wisdom. Right at the Agya Chakra level. Salutations to thee, reverent salutations to thee. And then I offer continual prostrations to the blessed Guru who has kindled the fire of self-knowledge within me, burning away the numerous karmas that have accumulated over countless lifetimes. Reverent salutations to the ultimate Guru. So of course, if you called Sri Ramakrishna the ultimate Guru, he would defer you to the Kundalini Shakti. That's the true overseer of all this activity. And as this verse says, whether secular or spiritual, has all come flowing out of Kundalini Ma. So this is some beautiful added inspiration and information that can open up for us knowledge about these chakras so that we won't be caught off guard with some poison at some point when we encounter them. And of course, many of the good, positive devotees and aspirants, the sadhakas of the world today, they're, if not already having had opened the fourth chakra and living in the heart center, their life's expressing that, are, as Sri Ramakrishna said, maybe running a boat race between the higher heavens in that heart center, and expanding their knowledge base and trying to convince her, to attract her into their very form, so that she will rush to meet Shiva at the crown of the head. She's got her own vendetta here, you see, the death of ignorance. She knows how to deal with the illusion of death. And she says, I'm just going to meet Lord Shiva, Parama Shiva, in the crown of the head. Want to come along? So you want to come with me? Then sail with me, sail with me, sail with me. Break free of all the mundane, limiting conventions and open the inner eye of wisdom, as these slokas so beautifully state. So then if we go up the deities, this actually won't take us a long time, these 7 chakras of Kundalini Yoga. We've gone up and seen the chakras, we've seen how they correlate with, you might say, physical body, subtle body, and causal body would be a good way to explain this so we don't get stuck in the physical. Now let's look at the elements that go with each. Of course, at the base of the Muladhara chakra would be earth, with Lord Brahma presiding. At the level of the Svadhisthana, at the generative organs, water, and Varuna would be the element and the deity. You can meditate on each of these and find out the verification for yourself how these fit together. It's a beautiful kind of meditation on tattvas, so people are talking a lot about vipassana, but how about upasana? Let's find out these powers inside of us and connect with them, and then know what where the elements come from. So we're not left with just earth and the 5 elements and what they can do, or with just earth and non-dual reality with not knowing anything in between, how the earth originated from non-dual reality, what its connections are. So these are things to meditate upon. So if you went to the Manipura at the navel, remember last week I called that a huge city with lots of avenues leading into it, as if you were in some sort of witness subtle body, some aerial plane, some divine vehicle, and you were looking at the Manipura, you'd see billions of souls moving into it and then moving back to earth from it. And those beings are your ancestors and the elementals and the earthbound souls that are on that Kala chakra. The 3 worlds, peace be unto them, because they need it the most. So you start to make these correlations between the ancient Samkhya Yoga and between Patanjali's yoga and between Vedanta and between Buddhism and, yes, Jainism too, and the Kundalini system. Like taking up the Yoga Kundalini Upanishad, which is definitely one of the 108 Upanishads, but there it is all about Kundalini, so you can see how these systems not only borrowed from one another, but are inherently connected with each other. You don't really have to make the connections unless people have lost knowledge of the connections. And then you have to, and it falls to you to have to do that. But basically you're just living in a natural concrescence with all of them. So if you then go to the Manipura, then Agni and fire. The element would be fire, and the god of fire, Agni, would be there. And that's a lot of karma being burnt, hopefully in a good way, so that you can get to this 4th chakra, which air is the best symbol for it. And Isha, the chosen, ideal is there. Most beings are wisely advised by their authentic Dharma teachers to meditate in the heart. Isha Hridaya, meditate in the heart and wait until these higher chakras open of their own accord. Because if you force them, you might run afoul of some poisons. See, teachers have seen that, seers have seen that happen a lot. So there's a lot to be said to proceeding by stages, graduating, accomplishing, and then easing your way forward. Just like a Jain might not want to go outside his yard because some karmas are potentially waiting out there. You would not want to go beyond the heart chakra to the throat chakra and so forth until you had accomplished everything that you needed to support yourself and keep you free of these poisons as you moved inwardly. So, of course, if you've reached the heart chakra, game over, as we say, quote unquote. The game of Maya is over there, and you don't have to return to physical embodiment anymore unless you want to or need to for some reason of your own auspice. The Divine Mother will direct you back like some of these great souls. Jivan Muktas and Bodhisattvas, and Ishvar Kotis, Nitya Siddhas, they have this ability to merge themselves in Brahman and call themselves back. They have their own inner magnet. The mental filings of their thoughts aren't blown away by the three lower life and the three lower chakras, so that you can't gather them back again when you need them. Theirs are very close to the magnet of the heart, and that's why this chakra is far more important than the third chakra as a gathering place. And a place that is free of the grosser poisons that call people back to earthly embodiment in ignorance. So air and Isha would be the element and the deity there. In the Vishuddha at the throat, where Dharma and wisdom is so readily available through teachers and mediums, then ether would be that. So you might say that you can make a case for putting putting the sense of smell in the Muladhara, putting the sense of taste at the Svadhisthara, putting the sense of fire or heat or at the Manipura, and at the center of air, Isha, at the heart center, you would be putting air. Well, it's there already. And then, of course, the sense of feel, deep feeling. And then at the next chakra there at the throat, you would assign ether, or of course hearing there. So here it's very important to hear what Sadashiva says, because he's the deity there. He's the highest aspect of Shiva, and so operating there at the throat center. And so you can put the five elements and their five senses in an ingoing and involutionary way, and that way work your way up into the subtler elements. There's all of the physical elements and physical senses will all find their origins in the tanmatras. Now, then you see, well, the elements kind of disappear at the Agya Chakra. Oops, what do we assign there? We've gone beyond ether. And that's Shambhu. The essential Shiva is there. And that's at the forehead, as we said earlier. So that is, we've given this class series that title, the Wisdom Eye, or Jnana Chakshu, the Eye of Wisdom, and using it as an arrival place for higher consciousness. And finally you come to the Sahasrara, that's the Prana Shakti herself there, arrives with Shiva intact to meet at the crown of the head, and beyond the five elements, of course, where all is kept in a state of abeyance, like in deep sleep. This is the only thing we have to really compare it to in our memory here on earth. As you move up, I ask you to return now to earth with me. Because you see, after the first two chakras, I put a quote from the tradition. Each chakra has a certain number of petals that hold letters, bijams, and their innate powers. Letters, bijams meaning power words. Like, for instance, we'll never forget the word water. that's just in English, or vani, or aqua, or pani, or any other word you want to assign to water. It's going to be in the mind of hundreds and thousands and millions of beings. They're going to have a word for water, and water has actually come out of this word, known by all beings. So when all beings get together and use the mind as a projecting place, then water is going to be a part of it, and so they're going to want to flow this liquid right into the Sahasrara. I'm sorry, right into the Svadhisthana. And so water will be available, and all the way down to earth. It will nourish the earth. So when you're thinking about the origins of things and how they manifest from inward out, which you should be doing because it's the opposite of involution, is evolution. And it's going on not just on the physical universe, but on 7 different levels of your consciousness and in the consciousness of all beings. So this is part of what can be said about the number of petals that hold certain letters with their innate powers. These powers are called Prana Shaktis. That's next. After you see the Manipura explained there, the next quote is, "The chakras are vortexes of vital consciousness force called Prana Shaktis." And there are many of these Prana Shaktis. And the next assignment, or quote, "Each chakra possesses a host of forces that work on its own specific plane." So these Prana Shaktis you're going to want to make acquaintance of inside. These are my daughters or forces of Kundalini Mother. And when she rises up these chakras, she will utilize them and make them available to people like, say, yogis and yoginis, so that they can get the most benefit out of their inward ascent, we like to say. So we have just 10 minutes or so left in the first half, and I wanted to read from you, because our founder, Lex Hickson, founder of SRV Associations, of course put out this marvelous book, Mother of the Universe, with Dakshina Kali Ma there in the front, as is shown, and the subtitle being Visions of the Goddess and Tantric Hymns of Enlightenment. So this Kundalini system has a deep, deep relationship with Tantra. Of course, worship of any deity would infer about Tantra, but I thought that rather than trying to explain such esoteric things as Prana Shaktis, petals, bijams, seeds, and these kinds of powers, that I might want to just read one of his poems that would help explain that to us. So let's take the last few minutes of this first half to be able to hear what is said in this beautiful song. It's by Ram Prasad, and in that way turned into a poem of lyrics more than a song, but these can be sung as well. O Mother Kundalini, coiled potency, arising gradually as consciousness within all beings, you abide in the primal root of awareness, 4 petals at the base of the spine, and within the 1,000-petaled lotus that blossoms at the crown. The inward river Ganga flows through right-hand regions as molten sun, inward river Jumna through left-hand regions as liquid moon. The central stream of your energy, O Kundalini, is luminous clarity, the inward river of Saraswati, union of mother reality with father reality. Assuming form as the serpent of self-luminosity, at rest in red coils all about Lord Shiva, who is the clear light of contemplation, you awaken and manifest, O Mother, on the petals of 6 ascending lotus centers, as the 50 letters of the sacred alphabet. Your dynamic power alone plays through solar plexus, focus of strength and will, seed sounds of your feminine mystery balance on 12 petals of the lotus heart. Your potent vowels cluster on the 16-petaled lotus at the throat. Syllables containing your revolutionary wisdom emanate from the 2-petaled lotus between the eyebrows. My beloved mentor once whispered in my ear these instructions for meditation. Visualize your own body as sparkling goddess energy. Within 6 spirals of consciousness, the universal form of humanity, dwells every being from the heavenly hierarchy, embodying feminine and masculine energy, each riding an animal that manifests power or beauty: elephant, bull, ram, lion, peacock, swan, deer. When breath catches in delight and enters momentary suspension, these subtle structures flash before the inner eye, and sweet humming music is heard. First, the bass note of a black bee, intoxicated by golden pollen, then waves roaring in the conscious ocean. Ascend swiftly in awareness through 6 levels, symbolized by dense earth, flowing water, dancing fire, invisible wind, open space, and all-embracing mind. Each one entered with a key of sacred sound. Emerging into her 1,000-petaled reality, O meditator, become the goddess consciously. She is your essence, you her expression. Now cast your burning glance of compassion upon all beings in creation. You are the primal sound that pervades all phenomena. You, the pearl of clear light beyond all worlds. You bear a snow-white skullcap like the half-moon, brimming with the nectar of timeless bliss. You flash the curving sword of non-dual wisdom. No boundary can now remain. This is only consciousness. Who can create division? Methods of prayer and meditation are numerous, but there need be no concern over this. All sacred ways are simply the free play of Goddess Kali, through diverse modes of longing. The soul who awakens as her reality never falls asleep again into waking dreams of conflict and separation. The awakened soul disappears into its source. Can one return into the realm of egocentric desire, captivated by pleasure or bounded by fear after plunging into boundless space? O Goddess, now open the brilliant lotus behind the human brow, and remove every sorrow from your lovers. Please unite your ascending creative energy with your eternal clear light that shines from the 1,000-petaled lotus of reality, source of the 6th lotus human body. Light and light alone abides there as Kali, Kali, Kali. Any person of mystic inclination who hears this poet's awakened cry will swim in the limitless sea of ecstasy, ocean of illumination that receives all conscious streams. So what to say after this beautiful translation in English by our founder Lex Hickson of this beautiful Ramprasad Mother Kali, but please return with us after the break of 15 minutes. And also, if you want to look for a copy of this beautiful book, there are hundreds of other poems in here. Well, let's say dozens and dozens, which are as beautiful and profound as this offering. And you can see how it follows the train of what we've been discussing, actually for 5 weeks now, but particularly in this chart where it becomes slippery ground to try and tell you what petals, letters, and Prana Shaktis are all about, very well expressed in this poem for our elucidation and our inspiration. So here we will take our 15-minute break.